Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. And good morning, founder, and good morning to you too, Patty Cakes. Yes, it is a good morning. It's been a good weekend. It's a little bit chilly today, but yeah, it's wintertime. That's just me. And with that, let's open up with our Kids Corner video.
Most people go through life never discovering what their true talents are. Most people don't use what they have brought into this universe. Most of us go through life with the brakes on, holding back. Don't hold back. Go through this life asking yourself questions. Go places you have never been. See things you have never seen. Do things you never thought possible. Discover what you love, believe in your abilities, trust yourself. Go for the things you want. Embrace those who encourage you. Give of yourself what others do not expect of you. Don't hold back. You can reach your full potential. It is possible. Don't hold back.
Yeah, and I chose that video because, we do have a lot of young people out there. And, don't hold back. Make sure that you are living to your fullest potential. Because I think I played another video by this young man last week. And, he was saying, when people tell you can't do anything and, they're just saying all the negative things, turn those into a positive. And so I chose this video just to follow up with that, just to saying, don't hold back. Go full steam ahead. And with that, we're going to get into our prayer. Now, this prayer is going to be a little bit different from what we've been doing, and we'll get back to how to honor God with our body. But this weekend, our pastor, he introduced a new prayer, and it was like how to pray the prayer of Jabez. And what I really appreciated about this particular um, sermon he did, and I'm trying to find, there, and it's First Chronicles 9 and 10. And I just wanted to point this out before I get into the prayer. But it says, it's like verse 10, the last sentence says, and God granted his request. And I was just like, wow, that was really cool. So first we're asking God, please bless us with more than we need so we can be a blessing to others. God, give us influence so that we can make a difference. God, make us aware of your presence, right? And God, please protect us from every attack from the devil, because the devil's at all sides. But I will read, let me see if I can figure out. I'll just read the last verse. It says, Jabez cried out to God, to the God of Israel, oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. And God granted his request, because Jabez, a lot of people may not know this, but his name actually means pain. That's what his name translates to. So it's very interesting, but we're going to pray that prayer this week, especially for those out there that need encouragement. So now we're going to get into Recap Monday. And this is where, we're just going to get into a few of the headlines that were, maybe top of mind for individuals this weekend. So the first one that I wanted to look at was Jerome Powell. I guess he had an announcement to make. So let's get into that video first.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas. threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
So very interesting. We'll see where this goes, because I know it's been a lot of tension between President Donald Trump and Jerome Powell regarding interest rates in comparison to inflation and what's going on with the economy. So I just wanted to, get into and start out with that, those remarks from Powell. Now, the next video I wanted to get into, because we are definitely going to look at what's been going on in Minnesota. I wanted to start off with this video because it makes a lot of sense.
About that white lady. You guys don't care about Renee at all. You guys don't care about that lady that lost her life, that got unalived by the ICE agent. You guys don't even care about her. The only reason you care is because you don't like Trump. Anything attached to Trump, you're not going to like. You're not going to like it. Because if you truly, truly, truly believe that ICE agents are so evil and you hate them so much, you would have hated them when Obama was around too. But you don't. You guys only hate them now because it's under the Trump administration. But you didn't care when 3 million people were deported. You guys didn't care about them. You guys only care about it now because, one, you see everybody hopping on this train and you want to be a part of the show. You just want to be cool like everybody. You just want to blend in, and you're not brave enough to have an opinion of your own. So you're just a follower. That's what it is. This lady should still be here. No doubt in my mind, she should still be here. But you liberals unalived your own kind. You guys pumped her head up so much and yeah, you can do it. All for the camera, all just for social media. And now look, anybody know how the dog's doing? Where's PETA? Somebody need to call PETA. But yeah, and I just want to let you guys know that you guys don't care about this lady. This is fake outrage. Because if it was F-ICE, it would be F-ICE all across the board, no matter what administration it's under. It doesn't matter, Democrat, Republicans, Independent. If you feel that way about somebody, you're going to feel that way about them all the time. You only care about this lady because everybody cares about this lady.
Oh man, talking about cooking with fish grease. Cooking with fish grease. People don't have nothing to say. They act like Obama was not listed as a deporter chief, like Trump didn't basically take what Obama did and continue it on. Trump does not care about Democrat versus Republican. Trump cares about what's best for America. And what you're seeing is selective, fake, outraged in its highest form. And I see so many fake white liberal apologists, so many fake black people apologists acting like they care about this woman, like they wouldn't piss on this woman if it was raining outside and she was asking for $1. They would look at her like she was crazy if this wasn't a situation, if this is what they couldn't use as a promotional tactic. And it's so funny, they so sheep, they don't even realize that this is propaganda that's being handed to them and putting a battery in their back and having them go outside and looking stupid in front of the whole world.
Not wrong. It's crazy. And it's so sad that that young woman lost her life last week. Definitely praying for her family, her children, the people that were left behind, right? Now, I did want to get into that short because, under Obama, there were roughly 3 million people deported, and that's why he was known as a deporter in chief, while highlighting, so here's pretty much a breakdown what happened under Obama's administration from 2009 to 2016. Approximately 3 million to 3.1 million people over 8 years. Many sources round this to a mere 3 million, around 2.75 million to 3.1 million formal ICE removals, depending on the extract data set. The peak year was between 2012 and 2013, saw 400 to 438,000 removals in a single year. Okay. So, yeah, he's not up to 3 million deportations just with ICE. Now, there was, I think, close to 2 million people that left on their own recognizance, right? Those were self-deportations under Trump. But I want to say with ICE, I think there's still under 1 million that have been deported through the ICE deportation process. ICE isn't doing a bad job. But again, what that young lady said in the video that I just showed, it is selective outrage because no one said anything under Obama. And then when people found out how many people got deported, they were like, oh, wow, really? There were that many people deported? No, because there were no protests. Nobody came outside. No one said anything. No one said a thing. Where was the ACLU then? Where was the ADO then? Where were you? Where was No Kings then? Where were you? If it's no something, no wall, no USA at all, whatever that chant is, they say when they're walking through the streets, just yelling and cussing and really acting out. For the most part, they don't care. They are entitled. They do not care. But there are people here on this soil that do not align with our values. They are here illegally. They have broken the law and they have orders to be removed, and they need to be removed. And that's what's happening. And if you don't like it, oh well. I mean, I guess you can be upset if you want to. That's fine. But you cannot interrupt ICE while they're doing their jobs. And that needs to stop. I think they need to update the parameters. I think they should do at least within 300 feet. If someone is within 300 feet of ICE actually conducting their job, they should be immediately arrested on site, period. If there are people following ICE officers in their vehicles, they need to be arrested immediately, period, done. You can't just be following ICE officers, and they know when they're being followed, because if they turn the corner and you turn the corner and they stop their car and you stop their car, like, they know that you are following them. You can't say, well, I'm just trying to get to work. Then if they park, go around them and keep going about your day. Don't sit and park behind them waiting for them to travel on, because that means you're following them. It should be an immediate arrest. It should be 10 years in federal prison. And see, when people start going to federal prison and they really start losing their livelihood and their lives, they'll stop this. See, there haven't been enough people arrested and thrown in jail, but oh, that's right. That's right. We have to remember that the NAACP, they've actually put together a defense fund to help people. They have a legal defense and educational fund, and it has played a significant role in opposing ICE raids, framing them as civil rights violations, which is a lie. This disproportionately impacts Black, brown, and immigrant communities. What does the immigrant community and the brown community have anything to do with the NAACP? Nothing. Nothing. This organization needs to be disbanded immediately. Immediately. They have helped nobody but themselves. It's complete grift. So, this involvement stems from the organization's century long history of advocating against systemic oppression, racial profiling, and policies that they argue echo historical injustices like slave patrol and Jim Crow era tactics. Now, those tactics were specifically against freed slaves. Freed slaves. Immigrants were never slaves on this soil. Why in the world is the NAACP got a fund for them? Yeah. So critics, including some conservative commentators and law enforcement supporters, view these efforts as obstructing federal immigration enforcement and potentially shielding criminal activity through NAACP leaders emphasize their focus on protecting constitutional rights without endorsing illegal immigration. You are horrible, NAACP. And I hope you hear me. Every single charter needs to be disbanded. You need to be deemed as a terrorist organization for supporting illegal activity. And I don't want to see the NAACP anymore because you don't care. You do not care about the American Negro. You don't. You never did. That is not the purpose of this organization. It never was. It never did anything, ever. Ever. And if it did, show me, tell me, because there are no improvements in the American Negro community. I'm not talking about melanated people. There's a difference. Just because you have melanin in your skin does not make you an American Negro. If it does not say Negro on your birth certificate and you have a lineage based back to Negro, you're not an American Negro. You were imported here from somewhere else. Does not make you a Negro. Doesn't. And this group, founded roughly over a century ago, has done nothing for Black Americans. Has done nothing for the American Negro, and I'm going to say it. I will definitely link this when I repost later. But yeah, it goes on to just talk about, what they're doing, their perspectives, stakeholders, but is very interesting. Now, there are critics and broader debates. Some ex-users and commentators accuse the NAACP of prioritizing Black and brown narratives over Black American interests, like education disruptions or raids or enabling illegal activity. Others highlight taxpayer funding for resistance networks, viewing it as a politicized effort against broader security. Conversely, progressive voices praise the NAACP for standing against what they call chaos sown by ICE. Yeah, sure, progressives. And didn't Malcolm X say that progressive was the worst thing that could ever happen to the American Negro? He said that. So if the progressives are championing NAACP, yeah, the NAACP isn't doing anything for the American Negro, and they don't care. And they didn't care about this poor young woman that lost her life. They don't care. They don't care. Because if they did, they would have made sure that she was not in a place where she could have been injured. She was blocking ICE officers. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then you want to stand there and act like she was a martyr. No, she's not a martyr. She shouldn't have been there at all. People filled her head with ideology and an indoctrination that she has a right to interfere with federal agents. Just to say that in the same sentence is crazy. We have laws. You do not interfere with federal agents' investigations. No, never. That's not a thing. It's not a thing. Now, I want to get into some more news. And the next, I want to say, it's not an article, but it was an interview with Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, and NBC. So let's check this out.
Joining me now is Democratic Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis. Mayor Frey, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here in the wake of such a monumental week for your city. I want to start with the Trump administration arguing ICE officer Jonathan Ross was acting in self-defense. You have now seen the officer's cell phone video. What is your response? Do you believe the officer was acting in self-defense?
In the immediacy following the shooting, you heard people from the Trump administration saying that the victim was a domestic terrorist. You heard that the ICE agent was acting entirely in self-defense. And here's the thing. You don't need to take my word for it. You don't need to take their word for it. Watch the video. The ICE agent was not run over, as Trump stated. You had a person that was definitively trying to just get out of there. They were trying to leave the scene. That is not a person that's trying to run an ICE agent over. You have a person that is trying to protect our city, to look out for our neighbors. And by the way, there are 435,000.
Okay, that person, first of all, was not law enforcement. And if there were, they should not be blocking ICE. Now, I want to pause this really quick, and I want to play for you the video in question that the interviewer was referring to.
Change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking president. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
And that is where that individual got shot. She drove right into him and he shot her. That was it. Now, I am in full support of all ICE agents wearing audio and video body cameras at all times. They have to now. They have to. Because the perspectives that are being put out by different individuals, by different camera angles, because there wasn't a close-up, right? And had he had a body camera, there would have been a completely different vantage point. But she drove right into him. There was no ice on the ground where she was, so it wasn't like her tires slipped. No, she drove right into him. She was asked to get out of the car more than once. As she was told to get out of the car, her partner was trying to get in the car. And she drove off. But she drove right into the ICE agent that shot her.
People throughout Minneapolis that are looking out for their neighbors right now because they understand the magnitude of this moment, and they understand that the endurance of our republic depends on us looking out for each other, and we're standing strong here in Minneapolis.
Well, I hear you accusing Trump administration officials of a rush to judgment. Is it imperative for leaders like yourself to wait for this investigation to play out before making any type of determination about what exactly happened here, Mayor?
I think that's a fair point to make, and so let's have the investigation in the hands of someone that isn't biased. Let's not have it exclusively run through the FBI at the federal government or the Department of Justice. Let's have it with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension at the state level. This is an entity that has expertise. They have a long history of investigating cases just like this, and they have had investigations come, by the way, to both conclusions, with a charge and without a charge. We need to be doing this right now. We need to be doing this transparently. And what I was pushing back on from the very beginning was a narrative that had jumped to that conclusion right from the get-go. And when you've got a federal administration that is so quick to jump on a narrative as opposed to the truth, I think we all need to be speaking out.
Will you accept the results of the FBI investigation, Mayor?
You know, if it was an FBI investigation that was done jointly with an investigation from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, we could have had some trust that there were entities and individuals at the table that were properly reviewing the evidence. Look, I don't know what the results of the investigation will be. I don't know what the evidence behind the investigation will be, other than, of course, the videos that we've all seen with our own two eyes. What I will say is there is deep mistrust because so many of the things that we are hearing are not true. You know, again, obviously people can come to different conclusions and have different perspectives. But when there is debate about baseline facts, like, for instance, did the ICE agent get run over? Guys, the answer is no. It didn't happen.
Let me ask you, you told ICE, quote, to get the F out of Minneapolis. We are now seeing major protests all across the country, as you well know. I know that you've seen them as well. Do you bear any responsibility as a local leader, Mayor Frey, to bring down the temperature right now?
Of course, I bear responsibility to bring down the temperature. That's part of my role as mayor. And by the way, protests here in Minneapolis are peaceful. We had, 10,000 or so people that were protesting and marching yesterday, and virtually all of it was very peaceful expression of First Amendment rights. And, to those that are offended, I'm sorry I offended their delicate ears, but as far as who inflamed the situation, I dropped an F-bomb and they killed somebody. I think the killing somebody is the inflammatory element here, not the F-bomb, which I'm sure we've all heard before.
Well, let me ask you, because bigger picture, before this week, Mayor, ICE had already been ramping up its presence in Minneapolis. You said your police officers would not cooperate with them, that ICE enforcement was unconstitutional. You warned before this deadly shooting, quote, somebody's going to get seriously injured. Would you go so far as saying that you would support abolishing ICE?
Well, first off, I did not say that ICE enforcement was unconstitutional. What I said is the way that they are doing it is unconstitutional. You can't come into a city and discriminate solely on the basis of are you Latino or are you Somali, and then randomly pick people up off the street after that. I mean, we have had pregnant.
They're not randomly picking up people. What's happening is they have orders to pick up people that have overstayed their deportation orders to leave. And if there are other people in the general area, they ask them, are you here legally? And they ask them for their passports and their paperwork, and they can. They can. Yeah, this is why I want immediate deportations. Immediate. People have to get up off the soil. They really have to go.
Women dragged through the street. We've had teenagers that are American citizens just picked up. You can't just detain somebody because they look like they are Somali or they look like they are Latino. To be very clear for the whole country, that is what is happening right now. So look, do I think that we should just abolish the entire entity that does immigration enforcement? No. But the way it is being utilized doesn't make sense. I'm not asking for the DOJ to be abolished. I'm not asking for the Office of Management and Budget to be abolished. I am saying that the way that these institutions are being utilized right now by the Trump administration is wrong and, to be clear, is unconstitutional.
Well, let me press you a bit, because Tom Homan, the border czar, says Minneapolis's sanctuary city policy, just for our viewers, that effectively shields undocumented immigrants from deportation, makes it harder for ICE to enforce immigration law. How do you respond to that argument that your city's stance in eliminating cooperation with ICE has made it harder for federal law enforcement to safely enforce immigration laws in your city?
Look, what our policy says is that I don't want our police officers spending time working with ICE on.
Here's the problem. They have somebody who they've apprehended. Let's just say DUI. This person is here illegally. This person has deportation orders. They have them in a holding cell. Instead of having ICE come and get them from the holding cell, they release this person back out in the general public. Then ICE goes out into the general public to get this person. How do you think this is going to turn out? How do you think this is going to turn out? But he's not going to tell you that part.
Immigration enforcement. Because why? That's not our primary job. You know what I want our police officers doing? I want them stopping murders from happening. I want them preventing carjackings. And by the way, they're doing a hell of a job, right? We've only had 2 shootings in Minneapolis this whole year. And by the way, 50% of them were from ICE. So I want our officers focusing on safety. You know what I don't want them doing? I don't want them spending a single second hunting down a father who just dropped his kids off at daycare, is about to go work a 12-hour shift, who happened to be from Ecuador. That guy, he makes Minneapolis a better place, and I am proud to have him in our city. So, I want our officers focusing on safety, not randomly plucking people off the street and hunting them down.
Let me ask you about the leadership in your state. Dozens of people in Minnesota have been charged and convicted with stealing millions of dollars of taxpayer money for government programs. Do you think Governor Walz did enough to stop the fraud in your state? And do you support his decision not to run for re-election?
Well, look, Governor Walz is the reason that we've got paid family leave in Minnesota. He's the reason we've got free school lunches. Him and I, we've been through thick and thin.
But did he do enough to combat fraud,
over these
Mayor?
last 5
Did he do
years?
enough to combat
Answer the
fraud?
question.
Look, obviously, everybody could have done more to prevent fraud, and I think that's
Again, the question is pending.
a fair point to make. Do more to prevent fraud, and you look what he's doing right now. He's setting up a whole bunch of infrastructure to do that. And by the way, look, the fraud's real. We've all got to acknowledge it. The fraud is very real. And by the way, when somebody commits fraud, and there are many that have done that, you investigate it, you charge, you prosecute, and you put the person in jail. As an individual, you put the person in jail as an individual. You do not hold an entire community, any community, accountable for the actions of individuals.
All right, Mayor Jacob Frey, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
See, the only problem with that whole little soliloquy that he went through is, first of all, within the Walz administration, they knew the fraud that was going on, and the whistleblowers that told them were shut down and told, do not say anything. So somebody on the inside was pushing the button. They knew the fraud was being committed. People that took the money were committing more fraud because they were encouraging and telling people, hey, if you say your kid has autism, I'll give you a little bit of this money that I get. So it was rampant and widespread throughout one specific community, particularly the Somali community. Now, we don't know if it happened in any other communities. It very well may have, because it skyrocketed from a program that was like 2 million a year, something like that, to over like 400 million in a 5-year period. Like, people figured out where they could scam. But somebody on the inside had to be pushing the button. Somebody on the inside knew that this was going on. So when this mayor says, yeah, individuals should be arrested, there's a whole bunch of individuals within the government of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and within Minnesota state that needs to go to prison. Prison. Okay. We are all waiting for it because, see, you're just one domino in a series of dominoes. It's happening in Maine. It's happening in all 50 states. It's the question is, if is it not happening? It's happening. What's the degree that it's happening? Who knew what when they knew it? And how many individuals are going to go down? Because he's right. Okay, we'll say individuals. Got it. All of the individuals, including Governor Walz in this instance in Minnesota, prison. And it's going to be federal prison because you were messing with federal dollars. So this is going to be interesting to see. And Mayor Fry, I'm sorry, I mispronounced his name at the beginning. In my opinion, he's going to be serving some federal prison time as well. In my opinion, but he's definitely going down. So I just, recapped because it was interesting. The word harboring came up. And I wanted to know, is there a violation of Title 8, Section 1324? And so, God gave me some feedback. And it says there's no, the host use of the word harboring, right, would not constitute viable evidence that Minneapolis is violating Title 8, Section 1324. So I was like, okay, well, that's good, right? But then my question still becomes, could city policies be seen as a violation of Title 8, Section 1324? Now, city policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, commonly known as sanctuary policies, could theoretically be argued to violate Title 8, Section 1324, right? Harboring of illegal aliens. But in practice, they are not considered violations under established legal interpretations and court precedent. So the statute that we just went over, it criminalizes anyone knowing or in reckless disregard of an alien's unlawful status in the United States, conceals, harbors, or hides from detection or attempts to do so. Such an alien in any place, including buildings or transportation. Penalties can include fines and imprisonment up to 5 to 10 years per alien, or more aggravated cases like commercial gain or resulting in death. Now, in my opinion, when they have some of these individuals detained, they should just call ICE to come and pick them up. They should not be letting them out in the general public. Now, they could look at this and say, well, if we are keeping them and we're concealing them, you're not concealing them if they've been arrested. They need to be deported, period. They've violated a court order, number one, because they've already gotten their due process. They're supposed to leave here. And then they've broken the law. And individuals like that need to be deported immediately. And that's what we need to see. So key elements required for a violation include knowing or reckless disregard of the alien's legal status. Okay. Affirmative conduct, actively concealing, harboring, and that's, in my opinion, what they're doing when they have them in these cities. Providing shelter with intent to evade detection or shielding from authorities. To me, they are guilty of this because they put them in the community. That's shielding them. And you've got these people like this unfortunate woman who lost her life. And the mayor was like, well, she's trying to protect her neighbors. No, you should not be shielding these people. They need to be removed. They have orders to be removed. That's it. It's crazy. Now, court cases like United States versus Castillo and United States versus Vargas Cordon have emphasized that harboring typically requires actions that sustainably facilitate illegal presence while preventing detection, such as hiding individuals, providing false documents, or interfering directly with agents, lying to officials, or physically blocking access. That woman used her car. They could not drive past her because let's just say they decided to batter ram her car. They're like, okay, we're not going to get out of our cars. You're not going to get out of your car. We're gonna move you out of the way by using your car as a battering ram. I'm just saying they could have did that. They didn't do it. She was ordered to leave her car. She refused. She ran right into the agent. There was no ice on the ground. She had full control of her car. She ran into him. He shot her. She'd still be here today had she not believed the indoctrination that she was given. She was radicalized in a year. Yeah, that happened. So sad. And it's saying why sanctuary policies generally do not qualify. Sanctuary policy, like those in Minneapolis, involve passive non-cooperation rather than active harboring. And I guess if you're looking at it phonetically, yeah. But in my opinion, hiding somebody means you put them in the general public where they should be detained and removed. They should be turned over to officials. Officials should not have to go door to door, literally, because that's what they're doing, because they have an address for these individuals, to go pick them up in the general public while other people are there with whistles and all these other things. It's crazy. So refusing to honor immigration detainers or share certain information is a choice not to assist federal enforcement protected by the 10th Amendment's anti-commandering doctrine, Supreme Court rulings, which is crazy, and related sanctuary cases like Philadelphia versus the Attorney General in 2019. So federal courts have consistently held that non-cooperation alone does not meet the threshold for conceal, harbor, or shield under 1324, as it lacks the required affirmative act of concealment or shielding. I just think it's how you look at it phonetically. So no known prosecutions of state, local officials, or jurisdictions for sanctuary policies under 1324 have succeeded despite threats during prior administrations. So prior administrations have even threatened this. Now, legal analyses, just security and immigration advocacy groups describe such attempts as empty threats, noting the statute targets smuggling, human trafficking like conduct, not policy level non-cooperation. So they're considering this, they're just non-cooperative. Okay. Then maybe we can get you on Title 18, Section 111, interfering with federal agents in their line of duty within their jobs. But we're going to get these people up off the soil. I'm telling you. There are going to be more people working for ICE. And it's interesting because they keep thinking, well, we'll just do all these deterrences. We'll do that. You're just ramping people up to want to get more people off the soil, in my opinion. Really. So in short, politically charged claims exist, but legally, city policies limiting cooperation are generally not seen as violations of Title 8, Section 1324. They fall short of the active intentional concealment required, right? So if specific policy details change into direct obstruction, right, that could shift analysis. And I think, in my opinion, a lot of these have, but that's just the feedback that Grok's giving me. I don't agree. I think it's putting the general public in a very bad and precarious position, and it's harming people. It's not helping people. And with that, I wanted to briefly just look at the NAACP. I did. I already went over the NAACP, sorry, and how they are involved in this. But they're one group that they're supporting the unlawfulness, like what's going on in Minneapolis. Like I said, people are being hurt. They're being harmed because of the rhetoric. And the rhetoric definitely needs to stop. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we are going to get into some more news and definitely look at some things, other things going on in Minneapolis with Ilhan Omar. So thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, and we will see you on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And good morning, sassy lady. Thank you so much for joining us on X, and thank you for everybody joining us on X, YouTube, and Facebook. And with that, we're going to get into our next video. Now, Ilhan Omar, she did a couple of events over the weekend in Minneapolis. My question is always, when we have representatives, either House or Senate, that get involved in some of these events, are they covered by the speech and debate clause? And we'll get into that after we see some of these video clips that I have.
Omar finally got confronted about the infamous Quality Leering Center in Minneapolis, and she folds instantly. In fact, Ilhan gets extremely nervous anytime the reporter even mentions Somali fraud. She starts stuttering, stammering, and stumbling on her words, and even accidentally admits that new rules to prevent fraud would directly negatively impact the Somali community. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel, but let's start with the latest development in the Minnesota fraud scandal, because I think that explains why Ilhan is so nervous.
It was literally a foreign ATM taking cash out of the United States to foreign destinations, and we don't know the reason why. But that is now under investigation by the FBI and HSI. And people say, well, is this normal? I mean, maybe this goes on at every airport. We got comparative statistics yesterday. The amount of money that these Somali couriers took out of the Minneapolis airport, with the TSA flagging it daily, was 99 times larger than all the cash that was declared in luggage going out of New York's JFK International Airport, one of the busiest international airports in America. 99 times more than what flies out of Dallas. 90% more. 90% more than what was flown out of Seattle, which is the most common airport for people to go to Asia from. This was an abnormally high amount of cash being stuffed in the luggage, being detected every day by the TSA, because, by the way, the couriers they declared the money. They literally would say, yeah, we got $1 million in our suitcase, which you have to do to get it through the airport. And And nobody in the Biden administration thought it was unusual that $1 million of cash was moving in luggage out of the country, out of Minneapolis every day, way more than any other airport in America at the time.
Every new piece of information that comes out about this scandal makes it harder for politicians like Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar to argue that this was anything but intentional. Every rule was broken, every alarm sounded, every red flag alerted, but every politician was forced to accept it because the Somali voting bloc grew too powerful. They could either willfully ignore the fraud to receive the Somali vote and get flooded with campaign contributions, or they could try to expose the fraud, get threatened by Tim Walz, be publicly condemned as a racist, and lose their position in elected office. It was emotional extortion on the back of white liberal guilt. But let's get into this insane interview. The very first question the reporter asks Ilhan Omar is, did the woman who got shot by ICE do anything wrong? And just listen to Ilhan's response.
From the recordings that we see, is there anything that you believe was being done that should not have been done by Macklin Good? The administration says she was blocking the road. They are claiming this is an act of terrorism.
Yeah, Renee Nicole Good, as you hear her say, she's not mad. She's sitting in her car, peacefully waving cars to get by. This agent, as you see, gets out of his.
She was not peacefully waving for people to get by. She blocked ICE agents. She had her car in the middle of the road. Okay. I showed you guys the video.
Car automatically starts running towards her, trying to open her door. She feels scared. She tries to turn the wheel away. And then you see the other officer, who can clearly see the car is moving, move towards the front of the car, which, if they are saying that he has 10 years.
He was standing in front of the car. He had repositioned himself to stand in front of the car because he wanted to film her getting out of the car, because there was another agent that asked her to get out of the car more than once. I showed you the video. Now she's blaming him, saying that he ran into the car. The lies. For this alone, again, she's not protected by the speech and debate clause here. She's not. And everything can be used against her in a court of law.
On service and is trained, he should know that you shouldn't be trying to get in front of a moving car. And so it is not acceptable for Kristi Noem and the president and the vice president to make these kind of judgments without there being a full investigation, even though we can see in the videos that have been produced so far that what they are describing is really not what is taking place.
So no, she did absolutely nothing to contribute to that situation unfolding how it did. She wasn't in the wrong for spending the entire day obstructing and interfering with ICE operations. She wasn't in the wrong for parking perpendicular in the middle of a one-way street in the middle of an active ICE operation. She wasn't in the wrong for not complying with officers who gave her a lawful order to exit the vehicle, and she wasn't in the wrong for trying to recklessly flee from law enforcement and almost running over an officer. No, the blame is entirely with the officer for not cinematically diving out of the way like he's in a transporter movie. And Democrats are once again trying to insult everybody's intelligence by pretending that sarcasm doesn't exist and claiming because the woman said to the ICE officer sarcastically that she wasn't mad at him, while her wife is standing there berating the ICE officer, clearly mad at him, and we should instead focus on her words of friendship and not her actual actions of trying to run over an ICE officer. But I showed you that clip first because that's a talking point Ilhan Omar is happy to engage in, and she spouts her delusional nonsense confidently. But here's where the conversation turns to Somali fraud and Ilhan Omar starts choking on her words.
Right now is a lot of heat on your state. Treasury Secretary Bessent called Minnesota ground zero for what may be the most egregious welfare scam in our nation's history to date. 85 of the 98 people who were charged by the Justice Department with this welfare scheme are Somali. and you know this, the Treasury Secretary is probing whether any of the money was somehow funneled outside the country. He actually issued new standards. He's going to make it make someone disclose if they receive public assistance when they try to wire money out of the country, and he's lowered the bar for suspicious activity. What is the practical impact of doing that in the community?
It's just creating fear. What they are doing is creating confusion, chaos, trying to intimidate people from being able to exercise their regular, normal activities that they would.
If new rules being instituted to prevent fraud creates chaos in the Somali community, you're just admitting that the entire Somali community is engaging in fraud. Restrictions to stop fraud from occurring don't impact the lives of law-abiding citizens at all. The Treasury Secretary enacted a new rule that if you receive government welfare, you are unable to wire money out of the country. It is a common sense policy that if you require government assistance, you should not have so much excess that you can casually send it abroad. But that new rule change throws a giant wrench in the collective goal of the Somali people in America, which is to be a perpetual welfare dependent, steal as much money as you can from the taxpayer, and funnel it all entirely back to Somalia. But this is where Ilhan is confronted about the Quality Leering Center and about Tim Walsh dropping out due to this massive fraud.
Because the administration and many conservative allies of the administration argue that this is still ongoing. There was that conservative influencer who went out and posted this video that went viral alleging that daycare facilities were pocketing public funds.
Yeah, and as you know, he went hours where these businesses were not operating.
Yep, CBS went out and did a joint
again
investigation.
Creates the level of confusion and chaos that is not necessary in a moment when we are trying to deal with.
They misspelled learning. It was leering. That's why he keeps calling it the Leering Center, Learing, not learning. It's supposed to be the learning center. And then he changed it after Nick Shirley, a 23-year-old, brought it about. But now they want to blame Nick Shirley. It's crazy. And she's just like, oh, well, the hours are from 2 to 10. There's no windows. There's no outdoor activity for these children. What are you doing? Putting them in a closet for 8 hours? Because the hours are now from 2 to 10, even though the hours said that from 7 to 6. What is it? He was there all hours of the day. Morning, afternoon, evening. Stop lying. Stop the fraud.
The serious problem that needs serious people to be able to address it.
But do you think there was no recorded evidence of fraud according to the CBS investigation that was conducted? But Governor Walsh did choose to not run for re-election. He dropped out of the race because of all of this.
Also, they did do an investigation on the Leering Center, which had actually been shut down. Yeah.
Because he wants to focus on defending our state and not defending a seat.
Do you think there has been a sufficient level of accountability and ownership of the failure to have oversight here? Do you think this ends?
That is what we want. We want to.
She is once again intentionally spreading falsehoods because her unwavering loyalty lies with the Somali people. The Quality Leering Center was licensed from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. The narrative of its hours being 2 to 10 p.m. was only created after Nick Shirley exposed that it was empty in the middle of the day. It also had some 90 violations, which is why it was closed earlier in the year, but still received $2 million from the state of Minnesota. So after the whole thing was exposed, they tried to first change the sign to actually say learning, and then they brought in a bunch of kids to invite the dishonest mainstream media in there to push the narrative that it was a legitimate operation, even when it was still technically closed due to violations. And then the state officially announced that it was closed as of a week ago. And then she confirmed she has no idea whether the fraud is still ongoing. going, which we know it is because the Leering Center got $2 million while it was closed after receiving 90 violations. And then in this next clip, she complains that the federal government should continue to send Minnesota infinite money even though it's all being defrauded.
There is no justification for this search. We know that ICE has the ability to conduct raids.
Yeah.
There is no reason to have over 2,000 people coming in to our city and creating the level of terror that they have created.
Well, the administration argues that they have to do it because the state failed to, right?
The federal government and the state have been working peacefully together and have brought justice to these 87 people that you've described. None of the search that they have conducted has produced any sort of criminal activity. They haven't.
Now she's just being weird. We're talking about two different things. The 80 people were fraudsters convicted of stealing federal dollars. Completely separate issue than illegal people in Minneapolis in particular, within the state of Minnesota overall, that have violated deportation orders and they're supposed to not be here. Okay? She's convoluting two different conversations, trying to make it seem like, oh my gosh. I'm going to pray for her. I really need to.
Been able to charge anyone as of yet.
Well, the administration also announced they're going to cut food stamps to Minnesota because they say some of the food stamp money had been embezzled here. Are you
and those are the things that are being litigated, and it is again unconstitutional for them to do so.
Is it? Are you?
Actually, it's not unconstitutional because the SNAP program isn't in our Constitution. These entitlement programs, it's an entitlement program. By the way, it's federal dollars, by the way, and they could shut it off, ma'am. Shut it off. Now, these other states that refuse to send over paperwork, oh yeah, I went over that a week ago, where they're refusing to send over their data to USDA because the USDA is like, we want to know who's on your rolls, who's receiving these federal funds, because if there are dead people, if there are people that are here illegally, they should definitely not be receiving any funding. And we also want to know how much they're receiving of these federal dollars. They want to do what's called an audit. And Minnesota has refused to send this data to the USDA, claiming privacy issues. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's going on. So I want her to continue to sit here and lie her face off.
Confident that the fraud that has been discovered is no longer being conducted now. Is there any justification for saying this food stamp money is somehow being misused?
Yeah, there are ways to investigate fraud, which we have been doing in Minnesota, which the federal government has been doing under the Biden administration. There is no reason for them to use this level of rhetoric. There is no reason for them to fully stop these
Did you guys know that there was a fraud investigation going on under the Biden administration? There was? I didn't know that.
Funding these programs.
Every blue state refused to send the federal government records of who was on federally funded welfare programs because they all want to hide the massive amount of taxpayer money that is going to pay for illegals. And in the case of Ilhan Omar's Somali constituency, we know that 89% of Somali households with a child are on some sort of welfare. That's why, in her words, it's causing so much chaos that now these welfare recipients can't wire money back to Somalia, and why the Somali community specifically is so negatively impacted by SNAP funding being canceled. It's like these blue states think everyone is entitled to bankroll the lifestyle of their illegal future Democrat voter. They promise them free stuff if they turn around and vote Democrat when they eventually gain citizenship, or even before they get citizenship, because we know in Minnesota, one U.S. citizen can advocate or endorse for 9 other people to vote. And those 9 other people aren't checked or vetted for citizenship. They just simply get advocated by one Somali who is a U.S. citizen, and they're good to go. And Democrats are offended that the American people no longer want to fund their illegal voter harvesting scheme. And she claims the Biden administration was doing its job to crack down on fraud, even though in the first clip we saw they were allowing over $1 million a day to exit the Minneapolis airport. She just wants the investigations to stop entirely, because if they continue down that rabbit hole, Ilhan Omar will eventually be implicated. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit.
Yeah, and I was actually listening to some commentary over the weekend. And yeah, she may be questioned this week because they want to find out how she went from basically a zero net worth when she got into political office, and now her net worth is north of 6 million up to 30 million. Now, when I investigated this, it showed that her husband had come into some money through some business ventures that he had. So I think that money is his money. I mean, obviously their money, so it's their money. I'm not saying it like that, but I'm just saying it's not anything that she did to attain wealth, if that makes any sense. Because she only makes like what? Like I think they make like 175,000 a year. I'm just, rounding it out. But that's all they make a year. So obviously that's not going to make you a millionaire, right? But I really think it's something financial with her husband. I don't think the $30 million number that they're toting around is her, according to what I investigated here on the show a couple months back. So the next video that I do want to get into, now this is Representative Omar and also another representative. Let me get her name up here. I think her last name is Craig, Annie Craig. So Representatives Annie Craig and Ilhan Omar. Now they are speaking in front of a detention center, and I find this type of activity very consistent of what has happened in New Jersey, California. I'm trying to think what other states did it happen in. I want to say I didn't see it happen in Oregon, in Portland. I didn't see there was a lot of protesting in Oregon, but definitely in California and in New Jersey, where these individuals, they go to the detention center and they know good and well they can't get in. They can't. They cannot get in, but they bring all the press and they make this big deal like, oh my gosh, they're not letting us in. No, they're not going to let you in. And they're not going to let you in, but you're going to make it seem like it's their fault and it's their problem. It's like, no, this is not your jurisdiction. There's a legislative body, there's an executive body, there's a judicial body. The legislative body, you can't just do whatever you want to the executive branch. You can't. That's why it's a separation of powers. ICE falls under the executive branch. It is not under your jurisdiction. Now, you wrote the laws that ICE can carry out, right? That's what you did. As Tom Homan has said, if you want a different result, change the laws, but you haven't. You haven't. You haven't. But you want to sit there and grandstand and complain. It's really weird. But let's go on.
Hey, myself, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota's 5th District, along with Angie Craig, the Congresswoman for Minnesota's 2nd District, and Kelly Morrison, the Congresswoman for Minnesota's 3rd District, made an attempt to enter Whibley Center here in Minneapolis. We were initially invited in to do our congressional oversight and to exercise our Article 1 duties. When we made it in, it was with the authorization of someone who's been here for a really long time, who understood that we had a congressional duty to enter the building and to see the facility.
They have no congressional duty. They have no jurisdiction ever, but they lie.
Shortly after we were let in, 2 officials came in and said that they received a message that we were no longer allowed to be in the building and that they were rescinding our invitation to come in and declining any further access to the building. When we initially entered, I'll briefly describe what we saw. We were taken in to the monitoring center. We were able to see where people were brought in. We were informed that there are 2 planes that are taking off today, taking detainees out of this center into other detention centers outside, within the United States. We did ask if those were deportation flights. We were told no. When we entered the detention center, we were able to observe about 20 people that were being detained there briefly. We also were told that there were showers we weren't able to see. We asked if there were hygiene products provided. They told us people are not held long enough to need those, which is insane because we've heard from people who have been detained here before. And so I will let my colleagues also share their observation, but I will end with this. What happened today is a blatant attempt to obstruct members of Congress from doing their oversight duties. When we appropriate funds as members of Congress, we are expected by the public to do oversight because the public requires their money be used with transparency and accountability.
Stop that. Stop that. For her to even say those words, with the amount of fraud going on in your state and definitely within your district, ma'am, I can't. You guys can watch the rest of the video because I'm running out of time. Let me get to the next one. Now, this is part of a protest that was going on in Minneapolis. Now, I'm going to show 2 different videos of Omar's perspective, but I'm also going to show part of the speech that she had at this protest.
Balls! Walls, grow some balls! Walls, grow some balls!
Metaphors, they matter here!
Metaphors, they matter here!
Metaphors, they matter here!
Metaphors, they matter here!
Palestine, they matter here!
Palestine, they matter here!
Queer rights, they matter here!
Tirelessly for immigrants, workers' rights in Minnesota. Eustachio Orozco. He was taken by ICE just the other day. Somebody say shame! 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 And we are out.
So it's a lot of screaming going on, as you guys can hear. The people are very upset at this protest, and the only reason I skipped around is because there's a lot of foul language in there, and I try not to do a lot of that here on my program. Now I'm going to pull up the other video and forward to the remarks given by Representative Omar.
This is not okay. This is not the America we want to live in. And this is not the life we want for ourselves and for our neighbors. But in this state-sanctioned violence where they murdered a neighbor of ours in broad daylight, you all have refused to be afraid. You all have refused to back down. You all have decided that this resistance is not one that can be intimidated. We are showing the nation that regardless of what the tyrant in the White House believes, we know that we are here to stay and this is our country. We are going to make a life here and we are going to stand up for our neighbors here in Minneapolis. As many of you know, they came to terrorize, abduct, and deport Somali immigrants here in Minnesota. When they couldn't find any because majority of us are legal residents and citizens, they decided to terrorize our...
But guess what, ma'am? If they are involved in any illegal activity, they can be removed. There's a process called denaturalization. You are not a sovereign born citizen. You can get up off the soil. And I saw a comment earlier. I don't have my comments going right now, but somebody was like, yeah, we're all immigrants. No, we're all not. And that sounds like somebody who's an immigrant saying that. I've done my genealogy. I am from the soil. Period. My story begins here on this soil. Now, yours may have been from abroad, and that's your story. That's your lineage. That's not mine. And another comment say, you don't sound black. Well, that's your opinion. I sound like me. I am the beautiful gift of God. My name is Ashaki Noni. Ashaki means beautiful, and Noni means gift of God. That is who I am. My name is Ashaki Noni. The title is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols. And I sound like me. And I am unique, as I should be, to sound like no one else. So thank you for your comment. I'm glad I don't sound like anybody else because I sound like those from my lineage. American Negroes. Yes, intelligent, articulate. Now let's get back to this.
Latino immigrants. They decided to pull up anybody that did not look white because they thought they could be a criminal or they could be undocumented. And we have responded with bravery. We have responded with bravery. We have responded with our neighbors showing up and saying, not on my watch. As they lose their minds trying to intimidate us. I see every single day neighbors trailing these violent people who are trying to intimidate us under the guise of law enforcement and saying no matter what you do to me, you can arrest me or not. I am going to document your illegal actions.
Their actions aren't illegal. They are there to pick up and apprehend individuals that you actually should have detained and had them pick them up outside of the general public. Your rhetoric, your public officials have endangered the citizens of Minneapolis and in the state of Minnesota. Representative Omar. I just find it disgusting that they're like, they're illegal. No, they are acting within their rights. They are federal agents. Again, when all of this happened under Obama, no one said anything. I think people are still shocked as how many people were deported under Obama. They're still shocked today. That was over roughly 10 years ago. Really? Really? And you still want to spout this? She's interesting. She really is. She really is interesting. And it's going to be amazing to see what happens this week when she's questioned by the ethics committee. Oh, yeah, she's going to be questioned about everything. And guess what? She can be denaturalized. It can happen. If there was any type of fraud found during her window of application, she can be denaturalized. A lot of these other people can be denaturalized as well, whether fraud or not, under the guise that they do not align with America. Period. We've had mass denaturalization before in this country, and it can happen again, and I'm for it because I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. Neither are my children. Neither are any of my relatives that are American Negroes. We're good. So all that, oh my gosh, they're just going to eliminate all brown people. Maybe from the Caribbean, maybe from Haiti, maybe from other parts of Africa that don't belong here. Yeah, y'all can go. Bye. Go to your own countries. build them up. Get off the soil. If you did not come here the right way, you need to leave. Period. You are not making our country better. You are making it worse. Get off the soil. That's where I'm at.
Nation says they want accountability in Minnesota, so they've taken a series of actions that they say will continue until there's proof that the alleged fraud has stopped.
This was definitely the most egregious thing I have seen, maybe in my whole time working at OLA.
And when they assist ICE, so to Jacob Fry, we say you! You are not doing enough!
And we're back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, my people. You know that it helps us out a ton. And of course, it helps you because it helps us keep bringing you these stories every day. Now, y'all, in today's video, I'm going to try to give a brief recap of this week in Minnesota, where all of the activity seems to have been happening. There was a fraud hearing where an ICE officer tragically killed a, what do we call her, protester, demonstrator, and where massive protests have broken out. And I'm gonna make the case that I believe that the leadership in Minnesota, including your girl, Ilhan Omar, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, and even the governor, Tim Walz, I believe that they're using this tragedy, and it is a tragedy. I believe that they're using this tragedy to distract from the growing fraud scandal, and I'm also going to predict that this will not work, y'all. I think that as tragic as Renee Good's death is, I just believe that the fraud scandal is going to continue, and it's going to be the bigger story in the long run. And you're going to see here today that just this week, additional evidence came out about the endemic way that the state of Minnesota handled not only the fraud itself, but also people who came out to speak against the fraud, about how government employees were even apparently involved in fraudulent activity. And again, I think once all of the protests die down, Minnesotans are still going to look around and they're still going to ask, where did our money go? So y'all, first we're going to start with your girl, Ilhan Omar. Yesterday, we did a video about her being kicked out of an ICE facility. That's what you're seeing on your screen now. The press conference after she and her comrades were kicked out. But I think following that, y'all, she did an impromptu back of the truck rally where I think the person on the truck was probably too radical even for Omar, y'all. So we're going to take a look at that first. Then we're going to look at the protests, and then we're going to follow up with what I think the protests are meant to cover up, which is the massive, insane amount of continuing disclosure about the fraud, y'all. So sit back and relax, hang in there for the entire video. Let me paint my picture. Let me tell my story, and let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, y'all, you know that we are a paralegal school. Let's go ahead and get into the story.
Walls, grow some balls! Walls, grow some balls! Walls, grow some balls! El pueblo presente! El pueblo presente! He was taken by ICE just the other day! Somebody say shame! They murder when they ignore calls from people who really need them, and when they assist ICE. So to Jacob Fry, we say you! You are not doing enough! Words are not enough! We need action now! Same goes to Tim Walz! You think it's gonna help anybody bringing the National Guard to Minnesota? No! Stop the war on the people!
Did y'all see your girls? Did you see her face, Ilhan Omar's face there as that lady, that unhinged woman, she's insulting Governor Tim Walz. She's insulting Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry. And Ilhan Omar is like, oh my gosh, yo, this lady's, she's even more unhinged than I am. I thought I was the most unhinged person in Minnesota. And y'all, I think that's why this is not gonna work. Because people like that, there are too many of them, but there are not enough of them for them to form any kind of majority. And average, regular, everyday people who may have been hurt by the tragic death of Renee Good, who may feel there was excessive force, who may be against ICE, they're still not ready to go to the extent of a lot of these loonies out there.
In Powderhorn Park, that's where people first gathered today, thousands of them, not too far from where Renee Good was shot and killed by that ICE agent on Wednesday. Protesters marched, covering city blocks and slowing traffic for hours to send a message to federal officials.
There's an enormous, gigantic outpouring of love for this community, for Minnesota, and a lot of concern and outrage about what's going on the federal invasion of our state and city.
Now, earlier in the day, that plea from Mayor Jacob Frey and Chief O'Hara for peaceful protests. This after the chief says officers arrested 29 people overnight after some protesters damaged a downtown hotel. The chief says MPD does not share specifics on law enforcement strategy, including for this weekend, but he did say MPD has currently canceled all off days for officers. And here's what he said when I asked how much of MPD's resources are being used right now to respond to situations arising from ICE operations.
So we have officers, obviously, that are conducting their normal duties and responding to 911 calls, but then they're also being held over, and they're being held on standby. Last night, as obviously we were dealing with over 200 officers at the scene to execute the unlawful assembly and dispersal order. We were also posting other police officers around downtown to ensure that we did not have additional destruction. So it is quite literally almost 100% of every sworn member of the department.
So in my opinion, these protests are being used by the powers that be as a convenient distraction, momentary and temporary distraction from the ongoing discovery and uncovering of all of the fraud that has happened in Minnesota over the past many years under Tim Walz. And so, yeah, these protests have their moment. People are angry. People have their feelings. But once all of this dies down, people still gonna need money. And they're still gonna wanna know, where did the money go?
The Trump administration says they want accountability in Minnesota, so they've taken a series of actions that they say will continue until there's proof that the alleged fraud has stopped. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins is suspending nearly $129 million in USDA awards to the state of Minnesota and city of Minneapolis. She's highlighting the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scheme, which she says involved USDA funding. Rollins is now giving state and local leaders 30 days to hand her agency justification for the federal dollars the state spent from January 20th of last year to now. The Treasury Department is acting too. Secretary Scott Bessent says the agency is auditing financial institutions that help process funds in Minnesota. And it's also investigating 4 money services businesses in the state.
Our team at FinCEN has just provided formal notification to these businesses that they are under investigation.
And considering much of this happened on Tim Walz's watch, it is no surprise that he is the sacrifice, that his political career has already been sacrificed here. But doesn't seem like that's enough, y'all. So he's pretty much on the level of groveling at this point, but I don't think it's going to be enough.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is calling this all an assault on his state.
We're exhausted as Americans, and this relentless assault on Minnesota, for whatever reason, is just cruel now. It has reached cruelness. So please, just give us a break. And if it's me, you're already getting what you want. But leave my people alone. Leave our state alone.
For example, just this week, additional disclosure came out that even Minnesota state employees were not only involved in the fraud, but were also involved in intimidating people who might report it. So first, let's take a look at an auditor's report that came out this week that talked about how employees were getting in on the action.
This was definitely the most egregious thing I have seen, maybe in my whole time working at OLA.
After 27 years with the Office of the Legislative Auditor, a statement like that from Judy Randall means something. After past suspicions, she says her most recent audit proved state workers were fabricating documents to cover up mismanagement of taxpayer money.
So these documents should exist. They didn't. We asked for them all of a sudden they now exist. And in at least one case, it was created wholesale and backdated by 2 years to give the impression that it had always been there and been done on time.
The OLA audited the Behavioral Health Administration within the Department of Human Services, which issues grants, nearly $200 million of taxpayer money each year, to addiction and mental health service providers. But the audit found BHA was not making sure those providers were doing the work.
BHA didn't conduct the site visits. Our auditors went and conducted the site visits that BHA should have done. And we identified serious concerns that services weren't being provided.
One of the grants examined by OLA was $1.6 million issued to the Wellness Collaborative through Zion Baptist Church in North Minneapolis. According to the OLA report, BHA didn't have documentation to give auditors to show that the services were rendered. What's more, the audit says the grant manager directly profited by leaving BHA and months later providing consulting services to the Wellness Collaborative for the grant she managed, which Randall says is not illegal.
But I think it raises a bunch of ethical questions at the very least.
Representatives at Zion strongly dispute what BHA and DHS told the auditors. They tell KARE 11 DHS sought them out for the grant. They provided services which DHS workers witnessed. They gave DHS documentation, and they say now they believe they're being scapegoated. The former grant manager told KARE 11 any wrongdoing falls squarely on DHS.
And then a congressional hearing about the fraud this week. To just take a look at the intimidation that employees were exercising one on the other so that whistleblowers would not come forward and report the fraud, y'all. This is crazy. And at the end of this video, I'm going to play this entire clip so that you can see all of her remarks. It's going to last for about 5 minutes. But let's just take a look at a clip here.
Employees who suggest improvements or, heaven forbid, report fraud then face significant retaliation. The messenger is shot. In 2019, Bernstein said she alerted Minnesota DHS officials to sloppy contracting practices that were not legally compliant. But it's not what most people would even consider fraud. She says she was later escorted out of the building, faced lengthy investigation, got trespassed from all DHS owned and leased properties, and received involuntary transfer to another state agency. So she says, so today if someone asks me, should I report fraud within DHS? I say, no, no, no. It is career suicide plus a whole lot more.
So yeah, y'all, I think that, again, I consider Renee Goods, I'm definitely not in a position to second guess law enforcement's use of lethal force because frankly, one, never been in that position. Two, my mama taught me, hey, when the police tell you to do something, you do it so that you don't get shot. I mean, she didn't use those words, but that was what she was telling me to do. Hey, they have guns. Do what they say, okay? So I can't imagine having put myself in that position. So that's my perspective on that. I do think that the protests are organic on some level, but I also think they're coordinated on some level as well. I think that people wanted to express their frustration with the situation, but also think that the powers that be are using this as a way to distract from the fraud and as a way that they hope to hurt Donald Trump and his administration. I don't think ICE is going anywhere. Them asking for ICE to leave Minneapolis and to leave Minnesota is less than useless. So y'all, do you agree with me? Do you believe that the powers that be are using this tragedy as an attempt to try to push their own political agenda? Let me know what you think, y'all. Drop a comment down below, but before you do, please stop, hit the share button. Share this video out over email, text message, WhatsApp, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all of your favorite social mediums. And of course, if you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe. Thank y'all for watching. Love y'all, and we'll see you back in the next one.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. For the record, my name is Marian Rurick, and I am currently serving in the Minnesota House of Representatives in House District 29B. I am a member on the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Committee, which was recently formed in January of 25. I was first asked to serve on the committee on January 4th, and soon after, the 5 Republican members began to meet. During one of those discussions, I was asked to reach out to the Department of Human Services whistleblowers on X, now called Minnesota Staff Fraud Reporting Commentary. I had been following them in the previous year. I reached out through a direct tweet on X on January 16th, and the very same day I got a response back that yes, they would be willing to speak to the Fraud Prevention Committee. Since that first contact, Chair Robbins and I and Representative Hudson have had multiple conference calls with them, and we have had one in-person meeting. At that meeting, they were both former and current employees. I've continued to message with them very often, sometimes daily, and their collective message has been completely consistent. Instead of focusing on fraudsters, DHS leadership instead focused its surveillance on employees. Since then, their expressed fear of retaliation has intensified under an avalanche of fraud in Minnesota. Their numbers have grown from 480 DHS employees, both current and former, to over 1,000 across multiple state agencies. They have told me repeatedly how grateful they are to the House Fraud Prevention Committee for focusing our attention on fraud in the state programs, using their inside information while keeping them completely protected. They have explained that they live in a constant state of fear of retaliation. One only has to look at what happened to Faye Bernstein to understand why. In a very recent Newsweek article dated December 13th of 25, Ms. Bernstein, a former compliance specialist, stated, Minnesota DHS functions in the opposite manner as you would think. Employees who suggest improvements or, heaven forbid, report fraud then face significant retaliation. The messenger is shot. In 2019, Bernstein said she alerted Minnesota DHS officials to sloppy contracting practices that were not legally compliant. But it's not what most people would even consider fraud. She says she was later escorted out of the building, faced lengthy investigation, got trespassed from all DHS owned and leased properties, and received involuntary transfer to another state agency. So she says, so today if someone asks me, should I report fraud within DHS, I say no, no, no. It is career suicide plus a whole lot more. So let's talk about that plus a whole lot more. In our face-to-face meetings with a group of whistleblowers, they revealed that retaliation now includes threats of being fired with cause, which means you do not get unemployment insurance in the state of Minnesota, being blacklisted from all state agencies, and I would note most likely our largest counties as well, which are Democrat-run. And then there was a veiled threat of the use of military intelligence against them. They later informed me that it was discovered that in some targeted employees or suspected whistleblowers' personnel files were pictures of their homes and their cars. They also described that supervisors asked them questions about their families that to them felt like a threat. One example was, we need to know where your kids go to school and where their bus stops are. I will also note that whistleblowers we spoke to described many times that DHS used surveillance programs to surveil employees' emails and chats and other communications, looking for keywords like fraud, double billing, underspending, and overpayments. One example that the whistleblowers let me know about Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. April 12th, 2024. Flanagan comes to a DHS Health and Human Services Equity Conference at the Heritage Center and Brooklyn Center. On stage, Flanagan acknowledges the X account and the fraud concerns it raised and publicly denounced the X users and called them weirdos and losers sitting in their mother's basement. This was in a public setting with hundreds of participants and elicited gasps among the crowd. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. So, about a week ago, I was saying, it's an inside job, right? The people on the inside are actually facilitating the fraud. And you just heard from a state representative say how a compliance specialist, and that's a field that I worked in, and we kind of work in the capacity of auditing, but a lot of our job is just to ensure that things are running the way they're supposed to. So when you get audited, you don't get dinged, basically. Like that's kind of the gig. And she was reassigned when she questioned the fraud. These people were using little mob tactics. Like, we need to know where your kids are. We have profiles on you. We're going to use, intelligence on you to protect fraud. So this is a culture within Minneapolis, Minnesota. I will say not Minneapolis. I keep forgetting it. That's a city. This is Minnesota. This is at the top. This is your state government. So it trickles down. That's your culture. That's your culture. But you know what? I'm not shocked because it's culture in Illinois. It's culture in California. Why are we so shocked? It's just that now we're hearing it. And before we were just speculating and saying allegedly. That's testimony. They went before Congress, before the ethics committee on Minnesota. And Walsh is standing there, we're like, well, you just got to stop, being mean to us. Basically, nobody's being mean to you, sir. We just all want to know what happened to the money, where did it go, and who's responsible. That's it. Because so now you're like, oh, well, just put it all on me. No, it's you. Yeah, you need to go to prison. But there are hundreds of people under you that also need to go to prison. They need their passports right now revoked. So they cannot flee the country. Oh, all of you need to go to prison. Every single one of you. Anybody that was involved in this fraud on the interior, intimidating people, pointing out the fraud to you, you all need to be in prison. Like it's really time to flip those tables and really hold people accountable. And this is the bigger problem. We'll find all this fraud. We'll find all these things going on, and then nobody goes to jail. No one? Not one person? Yeah, that needs to change. It definitely needs to change. And shortly, I wanted to briefly just talk about the speech and debate clause with Ilhan Omar. And I said, is there any liability for Ilhan Omar if his founder statement could be construed as threats against federal agents? But, it just kind of outlined the speech and debate clause. And I was like, is she covered by it? Is she not? Because she's at this protest. So it says, since this was not given in a congressional setting or as part of legislative business, it is not covered by the speech and debate clause. So if somebody tries to bring this up later on, like she was not in her capacity. She was not. Okay. Now, Representative Omar's speech on at the January 26th Minneapolis rally, as transcribed from the video, contains phrases like, we are going to make sure that these people pay for what they have done to us. What? Interesting. If there's no accountability today, there will be accountability tomorrow. And we're not going to stop until they get out of Minnesota. These could potentially be interpreted as critics have veiled threats against ICE or federal officials, especially in the heated context of protest following the fatal shooting of the U.S. citizen Renee Good by an ICE agent during an enforcement operation. Again, she was in the middle of an enforcement operation. They're not supposed to be there. Period. She was in the wrong completely. But it's ICE's fault that she was in the wrong. It's weird. So, however, under U.S. law, mere interpretation as threats does not automatically create liability. Okay. So there's something called the True Threats Doctrine, right? First Amendment protection. So the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that true threats are not protected by the First Amendment. Okay. A true threat is a statement where the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of intent to commit an act of unlawful violence against a person or group, right? Courts evaluated this based on context, including the speaker's intent, the reaction of listeners, and whether a reasonable person would interpret it as a genuine threat rather than hyperbolic political rhetoric or advocacy. right? Political speeches at rallies often receive broad protection, even if inflammatory, as long as they don't cross into direct incitement or imminent violence, right? So there are federal statutes on threats. Okay. Now, the application of Omar's speech. So context favors protection. The speech occurred at a public protest condemning ICE actions and the Trump administration's policy. Phrases like make them pay and accountability tomorrow appear to refer to political consequences, okay, rather than physical violence, right? References to resistance emphasize community solidarity, documentation of alleged abuses, and nonviolent confrontation. Courts have protected similar rhetoric in political context, viewing it as advocacy rather than actionable threats. So there's no imminent incitement, right? And partisan criticism versus legal action. Okay. Now there's current status of potential liability. There's no ongoing um, investigations or charges. Hypothetical liability. If a court were to find her statements constitute true threats, she could face criminal charges under the statements above. Civil liability might arise if agents sued for emotional distress or defamation, though qualified immunity and First Amendment defenses would apply. However, given the speech's context and precedent, right, this outcome is highly unlikely. Prosecutors would need strong evidence of intent, which appears absent. Okay. And then I asked another question. I said, there have been protests where there's been language to kill ICE officers, and it just has been, right? Is this speech protected? No. Speech calling to kill ICE officers or similar direct threats against federal agents is generally not protected by the First Amendment. So you need to understand that. People running around with signs that say kill ICE. I've seen them. I've seen it spray painted everywhere. I've seen you walking down the street with it. Those are direct threats. Such statements can qualify as true threats, which fall outside of constitutional protections under longstanding U.S. Supreme Court precedent. So, what I'm calling on the Justice Department to do today is go through all of the video footage that you have, find the individuals carrying those signs, ping their cell phones, and remove them. Arrest them. I want 10 years federal prison, full stop. Get them up because they are a danger to our society. They are not helping. They need to be removed immediately. Now, I'm demanding it. They are making us unsafe because it is a true threat. It needs to be stopped. It's crazy. So I'll just keep going. So, in the ongoing protests following January 7th fatal shooting by Renee Nicole Good by an ICE agent in Minneapolis, reports describe widespread demonstrations across cities, New York, Seattle, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. Common chants include abolish ICE, ICE out now, no justice, no peace, get ICE out of our streets, and F ICE, right? These are largely protected political speech criticizing policy and law enforcement actions, even if inflammatory. Okay. Protests have remained mostly peaceful per official statements. However, isolated reports, right, mention escalations to explicit violent language, such as chants of death to ICE or threats against agents, officials like Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. It is verified as direct calls to kill federal officers. This could violate federal statutes like Title 18, Section 115, okay? Threats to assault, kidnap, murder federal officials, including ICE agents, with penalty up to 10 years. Okay. Title 18, Section 875, interstate threats to injure. Such speech would not be protected, and individuals could face investigation or prosecution if intent, recklessness are shown. So, bottom line, broad anti-ICE protest speech, like chants, signs, criticisms, that's all protected under the First Amendment. We may not like it, but it is protected. Now, explicit, seriously sounding calls to kill ICE officers, that's not protected. It's deemed true threats and could lead to criminal liability. So again, you individuals out here, you know, caping for ICE to be unalived, you need to stop because you could go to prison. You could. I'm just saying, think it through. Now, the last thing we're going to go over is, oh, that cough kind of got me. It is a Philadelphia sheriff who is threatening to arrest ICE officers if they do anything to violate, I guess it would have to be state law or laws, but let's hear from her.
Good afternoon. I'm Rochelle Bilal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made up ICE, probably trumps a new army to attack citizens of the United States.
Started talking. What I was saying is we've already can tell that she's against Trump. Okay, full stop. It's not a made up army, ma'am. These are federal agents. Stop. I get you're in your feelings in your job, but do your job. But let's continue.
Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Krasner, who say he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here. None of that here. Law enforcement professionals do not shoot at moving vehicles. I'm not saying fleeing, because she wasn't fleeing. She was getting out of the way. Law enforcement professionals do not stand in front of moving vehicles invoking an action that is illegal. No, we don't. And so we stand here today with all those who stand against the made-up, fake, what you can call ICE, professional law enforcement. I don't call them none of that. I call them made-up, fake, wannabe law enforcement. Because what they do is against not only legal law, but the moral law. So I'm with the DA, and we will work with them. If any of them want to come in this city and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will wish you off. You don't want this smoke, because we will bring it to you. And the fake, whatever they call them, because I can't say the name, but the criminal in the White House would not be able to keep you from going to jail. Renee Good.
Again, this is a sheriff that's an activist. You're not a sheriff. You're an activist. Because to say the president of the United States is a criminal, really? You need to get it together. You're not trying to protect anybody. And you need to do your job and be respectful. You are in a position of authority. Be respectful. Your personal feelings, fine, have them, but not during your job. So I asked, can a sheriff arrest an enforcement officer? Yes, a sheriff can, in principle, arrest an immigration enforcement officer, such as an ICE agent, but only under very limited circumstances, right? ICE officers are federal law enforcement agents with authority derived from federal statutes. They perform duties under federal law, and the Supremacy Clause of the United States generally protects federal officers from state or local interference when they are acting within the scope of their official duties. So federal officers are not above the law, right? But states cannot prosecute or punish them for actions that are reasonably necessary, okay, to carry out federal responsibilities. So if an ICE agent's actions are within the bounds of federal authority, a sheriff generally cannot arrest them without violating the Supremacy Clause. Attempting to do so could expose the sheriff to federal charges such as obstruction of justice or impeding a federal officer, which is what I keep talking about, Title 18, Section 111. Now, however, if the ICE agent commits a state crime that is outside the scope of their federal duties or uses excessive, unreasonable force, assaults someone unlawfully, or engages in criminal behavior unrelated to immigration enforcement, then a sheriff can arrest them for violations of state law. That's it. Okay. And it says, e.g., assault, battery, or other crimes under Georgia law, since your location is in Georgia. So they were just looking at my state, right? So we're going to get on up out of here. I started a little late this morning. That's why I tried to stay. I try to get as close as I can to the 2 hours. But thank you guys for joining me here this morning on Unfiltered Vision News. And again, I will link all of these videos and everything so you guys can check this out later in the repost. But, thank you so much for joining me here for Recap Monday on Unfiltered Vision News. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.